Good afternoon, and I want to welcome you to DMPED's weekly check-in, our Fair Shot Budget Takeover Edition. My name is Tomas Talamonte. I am Deputy Chief of Staff to Mayor Muriel Bowser, and I'll be serving as your guest host for this week's check-in. This week we'll be joined by our education cluster as we talk about the continuum of birth to career and the many education investments from Mayor Bowser in this budget. So we are joined by Deputy Mayor Paul Kine. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for being here with us today. I also want to give a thank you as we are live from Eastern High School, so a special thank you to Principal Saw Brown and Eastern High School for hosting us today. And as you can see, we're in a very special classroom, EMT preparedness classroom, and this just reflects the many ways that Mayor Bowser's education and career job creation budget is thinking about ways that we reimagine our schools and offer school-based workforce supports and training opportunities to our high school students, which we're very excited about highlighting today. And this is just one of the many investments that we'll cover in today's weekly check-in as our commitment and Mayor Bowser's commitment to creating a transformative education and workforce system. And so we're going to have three panels today where we're going to cover a few very important investments and topics that is in Mayor Bowser's Fair Shot budget. And we're starting with our first panel, which is early childhood education and childcare. And so we're Deputy Mayor Kine and I are joined by Shauna Young, who is the Chief of Staff at the Office of the State Superintendent for Education. Shauna, thank you so much for joining us. We're very excited to talk about this important topic, childcare and early childhood education. And so I really want to start, Deputy Mayor Kine, with how do you, first of all, let's just get started with what are you most excited about with the mayor's budget investments in the education sector, and in particular with child care investments by the mayor?
Thank you, Tomas. I think there's so much to be excited about in this budget, and we are excited about the work we're doing on learning acceleration in the K-12 space, the workforce investments, which we'll get into. But I think in some senses, nothing is more important than the beginning of the continuum, which is the work we do with our youngest children. And the mayor has put a lot of different investments into that portion of the budget.
Mm-hmm. And tell me, how will this budget ensure that we can retain child care staff and ensure that we have the workforce going as DC is open, and we're excited to say DC is open, but as we're getting people back to work, as we're getting them back at their jobs, how does this budget ensure that we're retaining child care staff and ensuring that we have the workforce we need as we head to recovery?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Tomas. We really honor and value the workforce in our early childhood space, and I think it's important for all of us to recall that through the course of the pandemic, many and most of these centers have remained open. The mayor has put into this budget a few different methods of trying to ensure that we retain these workers and respect them, including incentives for 2,000 early child care workers who stay in their job for more than 12 months, who get the credentials that they need. Mm-hmm. We've included scholarship funding to help our early child care workers get the credentials that will help support their work. And lastly, on the workforce front, we've included in the mayor's budget, the mayor's included $18.5 million in a pay pilot to ensure that we are paying our early child care workforce what they need in order to sustain themselves and their families.
That is important and historic investment from the mayor as we get back on the path of recovery and reopening here in the district. And Shauna, I want to go to you next because DC has been a leader in the early childhood care, childhood space, and early childhood education space for years. And so can you talk a little bit about how DC has been, how we've been a leader in that, and what are some of what you're looking forward to in this budget that continues us on that track?
Thanks, Tomas. Yes, we're very lucky in the district to have significant investments and uptake for our early childhood system. As you know, we're lucky to have a mixed delivery system in DC for childcare, which means for our children ages 0 to 5, they're served by nearly 480 private childcare providers, as well as our schools who serve pre-K and grades in ages 3 and 4. And so we are actually leading the nation, according to the National Institute for Early Education Research, in both access to childcare and access to pre-K 3 and access to pre-K 4, as well as investment per capita for those children. So we're really excited about that, but we also know that investment in childcare begins at birth through the love and care that our childcare providers are providing those children. And so we've focused over the past several years with the Bowser administration investing in quality access and affordability for our families and for our child care. And that means in the Mayor Bowser's Fair Shot budget, we have investments of an additional approximately $68 million, $185 million total, in additional funding to increase high-quality, affordable child care, as well as the incentives that the Deputy Mayor suggested. We've also continued those investments throughout the pandemic for relief and recovery efforts, with about $25 million to date in several different relief and recovery grant programs going to those child care providers directly.
That's great. And we know that, this is just aligns with also the demand that we're seeing across the district for child care, and how we're my next question, Shauna, is how are we finding innovative ways to add more spots in more neighborhoods as that demand continues to grow? I know it's exciting. I feel like I can't walk through any neighborhood across the district without seeing, young babies and strollers and young parents taking their kids around, which that is also tied to demand in childcare here in the district. So how are we finding ways to add more spots in more neighborhoods, and while also making sure that we have high quality outcomes across the district in all 8 wards?
That's an incredibly important question, and so thank you for that. As you know, that early childhood plays a role not only in the comfort and the joy we take in the loving care that our child care providers are providing to our littlest babies and little toddlers and little people among us, but it also provides that important service to our families to ensure that people, and especially women, can get back to work and back into the workforce and have a sustainable lifestyle in our city. And we've seen that our investments in early child care have really supported that for all of us. We, as the Deputy Mayor said, have had a large number, if not the majority, of our child care centers open throughout the pandemic. More than 80% of our child care centers are open now, and have been for the past year, as our child care workers have been essential workers for us. In addition, as we go back towards recovery, we're making several investments to ensure that our child care centers both are sustainable and open, but also can grow to meet the needs of our growing families. And so we are, our budget has investments to support our access to quality facilities investments that allow our child cares to actually build more rooms and seats, as well as investments on Bridge to Work, which allows those seats to retain open for our families so that when they are going back to work, those seats are there. And so that's just really doubling down on the investments we've made over the past several years to ensure that we continue to lead and are first in the nation for our early childhood and our kids.
That's fantastic. And Deputy Mayor, I just want to know, what are your thoughts on reacting to some of those investments that Shauna highlighted, and just the excitement of not only continuing to be leading in the nation, but the growth opportunities that Shauna highlighted for our child care, early childhood education in the district?
Yeah, I think, and I'm sure Shauna agrees, that it really is an extraordinary opportunity to ensure that we continue to do the work on quality and access that we have begun in prior budgets that Mayor Bowser has put forward. In this instance, I'm particularly excited about the fact that we recognize, in order for people to return to work, and in order for women in particular to get back into the workforce, we've got to make sure we have the capacity and the available seats within our child care centers. So it's not the case that we can simply have centers open when there are children to go into the seats, but you have to have centers open with some vacant seats so that as our workforce comes back, they have places for their children to go, and that is one of the big investments that Shauna just highlighted, which I think is extremely important for our city.
Yes, very, very important. Again, we know that women have just been disproportionately impacted by the workforce impacts of the pandemic, and so that's very critical as we look to an equitable return to work and a return here in the district to be fully open, which is critical, and these investments will get us there. So it's very exciting to hear. So any other reflections or thoughts that you want to highlight in the budget, either of you, for Mayor Bowser's early childhood education investments?
I just think the combination of the investments that we have put forward are so thoughtful and really take us from relief to recovery to growth, and invest both in our people and our child care workers, as well as ensuring that access is available to our families moving forward. And so it takes a really comprehensive and balanced approach to make sure that our care is of the highest quality for our little children, but also available to all the families that need it, and we're really excited about that.
Yeah, and that's just so critical. It's not just recovery. It's how do we get on that pathway to growth that I think you'll hear a lot of in our different panels today about how Mayor Bowser is envisioning not just getting back to where we are, but getting back stronger, getting back better in several sectors, including our education sector, which is very exciting. And I know Deputy Mayor Kine has been a very staunch advocate throughout the whole budget formulation process on that. So, Shauna, I want to thank you for joining us for this first panel as we continue on the continuum of birth to career, as Deputy Mayor Kine likes to say it, and I think that's so real and so correct. We're going to next move into our next panel, which is going to be about learning acceleration and reopening. I'm excited to be joined by our next panelists, which include our DC Chancellor of Schools, Dr. Louis Farabee. We're also joined by Michelle Walker-Davis, Executive Director of the DC Public Charter School Board, and Delano Hunter, who is also with us from DPR. Director Delano Hunter will be joining us here in a second. But before we go to this next panel, I want to just remind everybody that you can go to budget.dc.gov at any time to find out more about the mayor's investments and the investments we're highlighting today, as well as share your thoughts on these investments that the mayor has in her Fair Shot budget proposal. We have a survey there where you can share your thoughts, your opinions, and we'd love to hear from you on that. So I want to welcome you all to our next panel about learning acceleration and reopening. And first, I just want to, Mayor Bowser has made it clear that all district public schools will be open in the fall, 5 days a week, for all students and teachers, and I want to hear an applause for that because we are all excited to get back to school and get our kids back in the classroom this fall. So Chancellor Farabee and Executive Director Walker-Davis, can you talk to us a little bit about the steps that DCPS and charter LEAs across the city have taken to open safely?
Yeah, thank you, Tomas, for that question. So I want to add additional context. 5 days a week, full time.
Full time. I love that.
So we want everyone to be really clear about that. No, we're excited about starting the school year in August, on August the 30th. And there's a lot of work that's been done, but what we're really most proud of is the health and safety work. When we survey our families, when we talk with our students, that's the one area that they want to continue to learn more about and ensure that our environment is conducive not only to learning, but also the health and safety that's needed for next school year. And so what DCPS has done is we've applied a layered approach. What that means is there's no particular one strategy that we think is superior to the other, but a multitude of strategies that create an environment that mitigate the spread of COVID-19. And that is face coverings that we provide for everyone expected throughout the day. That will not change going into the next school year. The HVAC enhancements that we've added into our schools. So you can see that represented here today at Eastern High School, which is also inclusive of changing our units, the filters in our units, and also we have mobile helper units in the classroom as well. In addition to that, we have established asymptomatic testing protocols for staff and students that we'll continue to evaluate. And then we've utilized a number of cleaning strategies as well to ensure that our environments are safe. So we'll spend a lot of our summer inviting families in to see our campuses, the great work that's happened, get them a chance to take a tour, see firsthand what it feels like to be back on campus. And again, we look forward to welcoming our students back come August.
I thank you for that, Chancellor. And I know you all have also just been doing such phenomenal work with your community engagement and parent engagement with special sessions that you've been holding virtually throughout the school year, letting them know about all of those updates and changes that you all have made in this school year alone, but as we prepare for next school year. So that's been very critical, and I thank you for your and DCPS's hard work on that with our school families.
And Tomas, I was extremely excited to talk to the chief here who runs the work in this classroom, who shared with me a moment ago that they've had students coming in here since October.
That is fantastic, and this is a beautiful classroom, very exciting classroom. And I want to go to you now to hear more about charter LEAs and what they're doing to prepare for the school year.
Sure. Thanks for the question. I would say echo a lot of the sentiments that the Chancellor shared about really paying attention to health and safety. So our families want to walk into clean, safe environments, and so our charter leaders have been spending a lot of time investing in making sure that the buildings are safe. But I think the other part that has really been joyful for me is many schools are bringing students back this semester. They brought them back this school year, and that is practice for putting the processes and all of the practices in place to serve families in the fall. So many of our schools are ready. Few are taking breaks in the summer. They're rolling right into summer programming, and that is giving them an opportunity to re-engage, see each other, create systems in the school, learn how to be in an environment, again, because it will take practice for some of our children, but there's a lot of excitement. I've had an opportunity to meet with almost every LEA leader, and all of them are just expressing great joy that they get back to familiar environments and can really serve our students and families well. So
I appreciate that, and it's just been so exciting, as we, Deputy Mayor, the Mayor, myself, we've been able to tour a lot of these schools as they're preparing for in-person classes, students coming back into the classroom, and just the excitement you see, even though covered by a mask, but you see the excitement on these students' faces as they're back with their friends and back with their teachers. It's just been so great, and we're so thankful to have some of the best educators in the world at our schools, both at the public charter and DCPS level, so we're just so excited about that. So a lot of students have been back, as you both have alluded to in our schools, but some students haven't come back in person yet. And so what do you say to the families that are maybe still a little hesitant? What is your message to them? And in particular, what should they expect when they get their kids back in the classroom? What are those communications that you're having with parents and families?
So as I mentioned earlier, we are inviting families back into our campuses now. We have a number of Wednesday activities, which is a flexible day for us to the remainder of the school year, and we've been leveraging those days. And in the summer, we're positioned to welcome back close to 20,000 students, and that's another opportunity for students who may have not been with us during the school year to be on our campuses. And then the tours, and just opening our doors. This is one of the sites here at Eastern High School that we're utilizing for vaccine administration. So you'll see students back on and families on our campuses to be vaccinated. Just a reminder, anyone 12 age or older can be vaccinated at any of our sites. In addition to that, we'll continue our family meals. So that's another way families can get back on campus. And then we'll ramp up the distribution of technology. As part of the mayor's budget, that allows us to realize our vision for one-to-one technology in our Power Learners initiative. So we will be issuing a device to every student in grades 3 through 12, and then there will be a device for 3-to-1 ratio for our students in grades pre-K to 2. So we're excited about that. And any student who needs access to the internet at home, the devices will be enabled for them to do that. And then we'll also be providing lots of tech support. So it's a great year for families to engage with us throughout the summer, and what they should ultimately expect is a welcome environment, a joyful learning experience, and one that is deeply rooted in being responsive to trauma and to mental health supports, while also accelerating academics. And that will be one-to-one, small group, but we'll meet students where they are.
Very important. And Director Walker-Davis?
Yes. So this is an area where I think you see both the diversity of our charter sector as well as where charters shine. So throughout this process, I think our schools have really leaned into their school communities and really asked what they wanted. They've paid attention. They've reached out in different and creative ways to parents and families. And so I think they're going to bring a lot of those practices into the fall, right? And so our buildings will be open. They will be warm and welcoming and joyful spaces. And I think a lot of what they learned about how to stay in contact, how to engage families will continue. So for example, even in the schools where they had virtual for a little bit longer than some other schools, they found ways to bring students and families into the space for fun activities, after school activities, just gathering to be in proximity with each other. So that will continue. Those relationships have been built and sustained, and that will continue. I think, like the Chancellor said as well, the use of technology will also be different this year when parents and families and students return. We've learned a lot being in distance learning, right? And there's some good practices that many of our schools want to hold on to even as we return to in person. And I do want to make a special note that even for those students who may have medical conditions that require them to stay virtual, all of our LEA leaders are thinking about how do they have as meaningful of an experience as possible that mirrors the experience of the students who are in person, and how do they bring them into the environment, whether that's the simulcast and all the other things that leaders have learned to do over this period of time. So I think parents should know that we are ready for you. We are ready for your children. We want to be able to serve your children well, and that is what the time and intention of all of our educators have been laser focused on, making the fall meaningful, rich, and productive.
That's great to hear. And again, they just love to hear the ways that DCPS and the charter LEAs are all working to bridge the digital divide and work to combat digital literacy, to making sure that these families have the support they need to make the students successful, that it'll still be virtual, but have the tools necessary to achieve the outcomes that we want them to achieve. So that's exciting to hear.
And Tomas, can I just pause for a moment to give a shout out to the teachers? Because we use the terms DCPS and LEAs, but what we really mean is the work of the teachers in the classrooms. And across all our public schools, our teachers have been extraordinary during the pandemic. And what should parents expect when kids come back in the fall? A lot of wonderful teachers who are excited to see them and work with them and work with their children.
Absolutely. And also want to give a shout out to Octo, our technology partner as well. So the mayor has announced another historic investment and a 3.6 increase to the U.S. UPSFF. And so how, with the increase of the U.S. UPSFF, how will the mayor's increase support our DCPS and public charter schools, in particular with the increase targeting additional funds for students that have consistently shown the greatest needs over time? So Chancellor, if you want to start us out there.
Sure. So this budget allows us to one, have stability in staffing. I couldn't have said it better than what the Deputy Mayor just described, is that really what we're talking about is the work of our staff, our educators, and what they do each day for our students and families. And this budget allows us to maintain staffing in a year where we had decrease in enrollment in DCPS. And enrollment is a primary driver for staffing. It allows us not only to sustain that, but add additional staff where we see the need to support students who have unique services that need to be provided this school year. And so as a result, we'll have additional 200 plus staff members. Many of those individuals will be mental health providers, and that's important. We've heard that from our students and our families. And then we'll have additional teachers that will allow us, as we need to, provide a small group and one-on-one instruction. And so this budget is strong in the sense it gives us the staffing and the capacity to deliver on a strong recovery and acceleration process for our students throughout the school year, and the ability to provide additional supports for students before and after school. So it allows us to continue our before and after school program, but also provide time with educators and staff as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, first I just want to thank Mayor Bowser for the investment and increasing the funding formula, and also for sharing that with our educators early. So they knew in advance her intentions, they started to plan accordingly. You know that charter schools build their budget independently, but I will say the themes that I've heard so far. So investment in additional staffing, investment in social and emotional supports, investments in accelerating learning, investments in interventions, including but not limited to high dosage tutoring. Those are the things that I've heard amongst our LEA leaders, and really just thinking about all the ways that students will need support to be successful.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And there's one, I want to close out on a question to this panel, to a question to Deputy Mayor Kime, because we know learning acceleration is essential to mitigating the lasting harm to our children that they've experienced during the pandemic. And we also know that this is part of reopening, and our recovery is addressing the trauma that so many of our students have experienced over the past year. And so the Chancellor alluded to this a little bit about what they're doing at DCPS and some of those mental health resources and supports. But can you just talk a little bit more about that, how we're investing in that and making sure that our kids feel supported and are getting the resources they need as they're coming back to school?
Yeah, thanks, Tomas. It's such an important question, and one that we've been talking about and working on together for over a year as we've considered what will students experience over the course of this pandemic, and what will we need to do differently as they come back into our buildings and we bring them back in person. And we've heard time and time again from families and from students and from educators the importance of focusing on mental wellness and mental health. And because of that, the mayor has included in her budget millions and millions of dollars of additional investments in mental health supports. For example, in this budget, there's an $8 million investment to ensure there's a mental health clinician in every single school. That includes 80 additional school-based mental health clinicians that will be hired and staffed into schools. This also includes in the budget an investment in expanded crisis response mental health support. So this is a mobile clinic that is part of the Department of Behavioral Health's work. It also includes additional money to our state Office of Education to provide supports to schools, professional development for teachers, make sure that the mental health teams know the best practices and can share with each other. We've expanded our mental health supports to the early childhood sector as well through this budget. And lastly, and as importantly, we acknowledge the importance of mental wellness amongst our families and amongst our educators. And this budget includes continuation of supports to families in terms of sessions that they can have access to, hotlines that they can call, and we are expanding access to that to all of our teachers and all of our public schools. So if teachers need support, they will be able to get it through the investments that we're making in this budget.
Thank you so much, Deputy Mayor. And it looks like we're at time for this panel, so I want to thank our panelists for this panel, and we're going to move on to our next panel. So thank you, Chancellor. Thank you, Director Walker
Thomas,
Davis.
Thank you so much. As we transition, I did want to say that the work of our learning acceleration expands beyond our public schools, and it includes a lot of work we're doing over the summer. So the mayor has invested heavily in our school-based work for our summer youth employment program.
Yes.
The mayor has invested heavily in something we're calling Boost Camps, which is a new creation this summer where we have embedded academic learning and acceleration in our traditional and exciting DPR summer camps. So we've got a lot of exciting activity where we are trying to go where all of the students and young people are and not just assuming that we'll be able to deliver everything they need at our school locations.
Thank you so much, Deputy Mayor, for that. And again, just to close out on the panel, thank you to our teachers. Just a big thank you for everything you have been doing. So DC is so lucky to have we are lucky to have the best teachers in the country, hands down. So now we're going to move on to inclusive jobs recovery, and we are joined by Director Unique Morris-Hughes from DOES. We're also joined by Anna Smith, the Executive Director of the DC Workforce Investment Council, and we're also joined by Ronald Mason, the President of the University of the District of Columbia, our land-grant university. So want to get started on this next panel. You've heard about us, how we're supporting residents from birth to school, and now we're talking about career. And so I want to turn over to this panel to talk about workforce investments. And really, Deputy Mayor Kine, if you can kind of give us a state of play where we are at in our workforce recovery, and how does the mayor's budget help us get our residents back to work?
Thanks so much, Tomas. I mean, this is work that all of us feel to be so critical as we look around our city and we see the rise in unemployment. And we have adopted an approach in our inclusive jobs recovery that really focuses on three things. In the first instance, we're squarely focused on those residents that have been hardest hit during this pandemic. We've talked before about women who've experienced 5 times greater unemployment out of the workforce over the pandemic than men have. Our residents of color, our communities of color, experience much greater rates of unemployment than white residents do. And also, residents that don't have bachelor's degrees have been harder hit than those who do, with something like a 24% difference between the unemployment rates for those residents who don't have bachelor's degrees versus those that do. So we're squarely focused on a jobs recovery program that is about our residents who have been hardest hit during the pandemic.
Great. Yeah, and I want to talk about that as we talk about the recovery, but also just looking to the future and to our growth of our workforce. And so we know that too often financial barriers prevent residents from attending college and getting a degree that would advance their careers. And so, Deputy Mayor, kind of want to talk to you about the DC Futures Program and how that pivotal $12.8 million investment would provide free college up to 15,000 residents. If you can talk a little bit more about that.
Yes, thank you. And President Mason is obviously here also and can chime in from UDC's perspective, but we're extremely excited about this initiative. We're very focused on high-wage, high-demand jobs, and so we are offering free college for associate's degrees and bachelor's degrees in those specific areas for residents who want to attend our local DC institutions. This funding and this initiative also involves supports for students. So, for example, there are many residents who want to attend college, get their associates, get their bachelor's, but struggle with childcare, struggle with transportation, struggle with other things that help make it very difficult for them to persist through college. So we are putting additional money into the University of the District of Columbia to support students as well as they persist through their associates and their bachelor's degrees. President Mason, I don't know if you want to add anything there.
I can add a little. So we had our own allocation of federal funds directly from the federal government. And we're going to piggyback on the work that the Deputy Mayor has done and be able to offer some pretty good financial incentives for students to come to school and stay in school, including free college for students in high need, also the kinds of supports that the Deputy Mayor talked about, but also, you know, we have a special partnership with Anacostia High School, and one of the things we're looking at there is IDAs, individual development accounts, which would basically be savings accounts for students to be able to accumulate money to be able to use by the time they graduate to start a business or to go on to a higher education. And so we have a lot of things that we're thinking about, and we're hoping to take the money the Deputy Mayor has put aside and the Mayor has put in the budget and expand it to be able to reach more students next year.
Thank you, President Mason. And I have many more questions for you, President Mason, here in a little bit. But I want to get to Director Morris Hughes. Director, first, I just want to say thank you to you and your staff who've worked tremendously throughout the pandemic in an unprecedented level to make sure that our workforce was supported. So just want to start by saying thank you.
Thank you, Tomas.
At the heart of the Mayor's workforce investment is $49 million to expand subsidized employment, apprenticeship, and training opportunities focused on jobs that will continue to grow in the district. And so how does the Mayor's budget prioritize on-the-job training programs, and how will that help reimagine our workforce systems and make us more competitive?
Sure. So at the D.C. Department of Employment Services, one of the areas that we're super focused on is really promoting the district's human capital. And one way for us to do that is to ensure that all of our job seekers and opportunity seekers are the most competitive candidate in the region. We do that by providing high quality training. We do that by providing training with a subsidized wage. And so this investment allows district residents to not have to choose between taking a job or getting training that's going to improve not only their ability to get that family sustaining job, but it allows them a little bit of funding to get by while they're doing training, which is going to put them over the edge and make them more competitive so that they can be first in line for all of the jobs that are now open and available here in the District of Columbia.
That's great. And we talked a little bit about it earlier, but I do think this is one of the most transformative programs for our young people, which is the Marion Barry Summer Youth Employment Program. And so we kick it off next week,
Yes.
which we're very excited.
Yes, Monday.
Very, very excited for that. And so we've seen the life-changing impacts it's had on district residents' lives for decades. And so how will the Mayor's FY22 budget support and expand SYEP? And
Sure.
what else do you want to say about SYEP?
Sure. So for 44 years, the Marion Barry Summer Youth Employment Program has not only given young people something to do for the summer, but it provides that necessary early career experience. So what this investment does, it creates the opportunity for young people to not have to choose between going to school and working. So these are expanded learning and earning opportunities so our young people can do both, which is excited because we don't want young people to feel like they have to choose. So it expands the number of slots, and then it gives meaningful learn and earn opportunities.
Love it. And I think we all remember our first jobs and
Yes,
how
we
that
do.
put on a path to success. I used to, hand out popcorn at a movie theater. That put me on my pathway to success.
Tomas, so did I.
But Director Smith, I want to talk about one of the key tenets of the Mayor's workforce investments is strengthening the connection between employers and job seekers. And so how will the new Career Coaches program work? And can you tell us a little bit about how it will connect residents to education, training, employment opportunities in our high-demand industries?
Sure. Thank you so much, Tomas, for that. I have the privilege of working hand in hand with these agencies and many more colleagues who are delivering incredible services and resources. But we know that in these unprecedented times that there's a great need, not just in terms of the number of impacted residents, but in the shifts in our rapidly changing workforce landscape. The labor market is changing, and we know folks need guidance, support, and tools. And so we're really excited because career coaching is an evidence-based tool that we know will work to help people understand their interests and what's available and connect with the right training, education, career opportunities that they're seeking. And so we're really excited about launching this new program.
That's great. And I want to also talk about the launch of the new employer-led training partnerships, and how will that help DC residents to compete for DC jobs?
Sure. So again, we are hearing from employers and from job seekers a desire to get back to work. We know DC is open, and we also know that there continue to be jobs and occupations that employers are having difficulty filling. Our residents want to work, and what they need is opportunity to connect to pathways, to training into those jobs. And so we are envisioning putting the tools, the resources, about $6 million into the hands of partnerships between employers and higher education institutions and training providers to create and launch innovative and new opportunities to train and provide residents with the learning and experience they need to ensure that they are competitive for and securing those jobs on the back end. So we're really excited about this innovative approach to training.
That's great. And partnerships is the key word there. And I want to get back to President Mason now, and again, the University of the District of Columbia. So we know that UDC is so integral on so many of our residents' pathway to the middle class, and really being so transformative for our residents. And so I want to talk to you a little bit more about how UDC is prepared to welcome back more students in-person learning in the fall. And can you talk us about the steps of how you're preparing for more students to come back this fall?
Sure. First, we're going to make sure we're a healthy university. All of our campuses have been going through renovations over the summer. All of the health protocols that you heard the Chancellor talk about at his schools, we'll be doing at our schools. In addition, though, we're requiring all faculty, staff, and students to be vaccinated before they return, because we did a survey, and that's what is going to make most people comfortable. And so we're real sure that we're doing everything we can from a health guidance point of view to make the campus safe. Second, we've learned a lot during the pandemic. What we learned is that we're very good at delivering online instruction because the mayor has recently upgraded all of our technology, and all of our faculty are 100% certified to teach online. And so we'll be bringing students back to the campuses, but we'll also have more options of electronic delivery available to them, which is good for them from a learning perspective. And then finally, you heard about the financial incentives. In addition to what we talked about, we're probably going to offer a $1,000 scholarship per semester to every high-need student because we know the students that we serve, many of whom are the same people that we're talking about, they have great challenges, and going to school had to go down on their list of priorities during the pandemic. And so if we're able to relieve their financial burden, that'll enable them to come back to school. And remember, we're the higher education system for the district. Mm-hmm. And so we do workforce certification, we have a community college, and we do bachelor's degrees, and we're connecting the dots all the way through the pipeline to produce talent for the district's workforce.
Well, I'm just reacting to the scholarship. That's going to be so transformative to so many students. So, President Mason, thank you for sharing that. Want to jump into that a little bit more about the how you all are retooling your curriculum to really make sure that our residents are prepared for high demand, high paying jobs and to be competitive when they go out into the workforce.
Sure. So even before the pandemic, as part of our equity imperative strategic plan, we did our homework on what the workforce needs are for the district. And so we've been retooling our curriculum to focus specifically on what the workforce needs are here. But we have three priorities. One is technology, STEM. The second is teacher preparation. And the third is healthcare. And we were working on those even before the pandemic. And so now the mayor has given us some seed funding to be able to accelerate the development of those pipelines. And in Anacostia, where our partnership is, it's called the C-Square Partnership, which is community to career. And so we're starting now to connect the pipelines not only at the higher education level, but also in the high schools. And so one of the other things we'll be doing is offering free dual enrollment courses to students in most of the high schools, 500 at least, so that they'll earn college credit before they even get to us in a seamless, multi-credentialed pipeline with multiple on and off ramps, so that a student can start at workforce level and in their own time and in their own way work their way all the way up through to what is really the pathway to the middle class, a bachelor's degree.
Tomas, if I can just jump in there, I do think one of the things President Mason is highlighting is just the ways in which we are using this moment to reimagine some of the way in which we work together and reimagine experiences for residents. So, for example, our high school students have been through so much during this pandemic, and one of the things that we've learned over and over again from talking to them is how much they value work and working. And we are investing a lot in ensuring that we've got these kinds of seamless transitions from high school into college. Many of our high school students don't want to go right to an academic program. They want to go into a training program. Some of them actually want to go right to work, so work-based learning works for them. Many of them want to go to pursue BAs. And we're finding ways to ensure that all of those pathways are strengthened through this budget. We're making specific investments in all of the pathways.
Yeah, absolutely. We're getting close to our time, but I do want to hear from our directors. Are there any other investments in the mayor's budget that excites you, that gets you, that we didn't talk about? Director Morris-Hughes, I want to go to you because I know there's a lot in this budget that excites you.
There is a lot in this budget that excites me. I have to say this, but one part of the house that we don't talk about a lot is our paid family leave program, and we really have this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity in front of us to make some strategic investments. And so what we have done is come up with this really balanced and thoughtful approach where with a surplus that currently exists in the paid family leave program, we will allocate $15 million to our undocumented workers for cash assistance who are not able to obtain unemployment insurance or any other benefits. We have allocated close to $35 million to support subsidies and a reduction of fees. So any district resident that wants to start a business in the District of Columbia only has to pay $99. And don't be fooled, entrepreneurship is workforce development too. You're just your own boss instead of working for someone else. And then we're also expanding the paid family leave benefit program by offering a 2-week prenatal leave. So women don't have to walk out of their office into labor and delivery because they're counting the number of days that they have to that they have available to take for leave, and a sexual abuse, domestic violence leave. So any victim of domestic violence doesn't have to choose to seek victim assistance or go to work. Those are things that we should really be proud of. They're part of our collective DC values, and I'm super excited to see them come to fruition in FY22.
Thank you, Director. Director Smith?
I think this has already been shared by our colleagues in the Economic Development Cluster, but I'll call out some of the investments that Mayor Bowser has put forward, because we know that we can prepare and train the best workforce in the country, but we also need employers coming to the table. We need businesses who are excited about investing in DC, who are excited to be here in our community and to hire our residents. And so I think about the Vitality Fund that DMPED has put forward, and really it is, from our vantage, and the role that the WIC plays is bringing all of these partners and folks together, and so I think employers will be a critical part of our recovery.
Definitely. President Mason, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add?
Yeah, just quickly, the mayor has consistently been investing more and more in UDC, which I think is a good thing, because it's hard to be a state without having a state system of higher education, and we are that. But I think I should also mention that the mayor and the deputy mayor in his cluster here have done a really good job of starting to connect the dots, because we are all working with the same people with the same needs, and we want to achieve the same outcomes. And so the more we can all connect the dots on the work that we're doing, I think the more successful we're going to be for the district. And so I just want to say thank you for those efforts.
Definitely, and this panel just is the epitome of the mayor's budget, which is a fair shot for all of our residents, which I just thank you all. And Deputy Mayor Khanna, you're a big cluster, so there's a lot of other investments in your cluster that we didn't get to talk about. Our public libraries. Are there other investments that you want to make sure that our residents know about in this budget, in our Fair Shot budget?
Yeah, thanks, Tomas. There are actually a number of other related investments that we haven't touched on that are actually critical for the kind of work that we're doing to both recover as a city and heal as a city and to reimagine ourselves. For example, we haven't yet touched on the importance of keeping our young people safe as they travel to and from schools. And the mayor has included in this budget a large investment, over $15 million in safe passage, which will ensure that we have 215 trusted adults on the pathways that students travel to and from schools in our 7 priority safe passage areas across the city. And it includes $6.1 million for a new microtransit program for schools within those safe passage areas in wards 7 and 8. That's 23 schools that will have access to vans that they can use however their communities deem fit to keep their students safe in the mornings and in the afternoons and after their school, after their activities in the afternoons. So we're doing a lot of work to ensure that kids are safe as they travel to and from. So that's an important investment. There's a second really important signature investment that we've touched on briefly, but it gets into this area of reimagining high school, and in fact is very appropriate for the room that we're sitting in. So we've learned that high school students really want experience in work, and we also know that people often learn best when they're actually on the job, as Director Morris Hughes was talking about, as opposed to in a classroom. And so we are investing through this mayor's budget in reimagining high school through an expanded CTE offering where we'll start in middle school. We'll provide more work-based learning for career and technical education pathways, in particular high-demand, high-wage sectors. 12th graders will spend a good portion of their day in internships at work, learning at work. They'll do that for credit. And at the same time, we're establishing an advanced technical center where students from any high school, DCPS or charter high schools, will have access to really high-quality CTE programming in the first instance in cybersecurity and in nursing and in other areas. So you will no longer only have access to CTE programs in the school you attend, but you'll be able to travel to an advanced technical center to get access to other kinds of programs. And we're doing that in partnership with UDC and other institutes of higher ed. So we're working hard to reimagine what high school can be to really engage students. And lastly, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about all of the investments in learning acceleration, which we didn't get a chance to talk about when the Chancellor and Executive Director Walker Davis were here. But the mayor is adamant that we have to heal and recover as a city and ensure that no students are left behind through any loss of learning. And we're focused very heavily on the recovery work. And she has invested, for example, $41 million in high-impact tutoring that will occur all over the city. And remember, that's a central supplement to the hundreds of millions of dollars that LEAs will spend on academic recovery through their federal funding that they get directly. So we are doing a lot of work on learning acceleration, ensuring we've got tutorial support, ensuring that children have access to tutorial supports through the libraries, for example, at camp, through the Summer Youth Employment Program, as I mentioned earlier. So we're very, very focused on academic recovery as well as another signature investment.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Those are all very critical and really signify the historic investments that the mayor is making on that continuum of birth to career. So I want to thank you, Deputy Mayor, for being here. I want to thank our panelists. Before we close out, I'd be remiss, and I thank the Chancellor for reminding everybody, any district resident 12 or older is eligible to get vaccinated right now. And Mayor Bowser announced some very exciting incentives to ensure that you get vaccinated. So right now at 3 sites, Anacostia High School, Ron Brown High School, and the RISE Demonstration Center, you can go and get your vaccination, and you will receive a $51 Visa gift card. That's exciting. That's real. That is real money in your pocket after you get your first dose vaccination. But you'll also be entered in a giveaway where you could win a Jeep Wrangler, a year's worth of groceries, a year's worth of Metro, rail, and bus, and some other exciting giveaways. So we want to make sure that you get your vaccination. Our students 12 and older, get your vaccination. You can go to taketheshotdc.com to learn more about those giveaways. But we want to make sure that everybody gets vaccinated because we are excited to say DC is open, and we want to make sure that everybody gets their vaccinations. So thank you again to Deputy Mayor Kine, our esteemed panelists. Thank you all for joining us for this week's DMPED Weekly Check-In, Fair Shot Budget Takeover. I've been your guest host, Tomas Salmonte. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great day.